In the dim light of his tablet, Matt sat enveloped by the quiet, the soft hum of the screen the only sound in the room. What he was watching, though, made his heart race. The video showed a woman with short, curly brunette hair, a style that was unmistakably like Emily's, his wife. She was grinning with excitement as she entered a room alongside a younger, taller man. This guy was built, all muscle and charm, easily towering over Matt, more athletic and lean. As they got closer, the man peeled off his shirt, revealing a body Matt couldn't help but notice was in impeccable shape. The chemistry between them was obvious from the start. The woman, his Emily, didn't hesitate as her clothes began slipping off, revealing a sleek lingerie set Matt recognized too well. It was the very one Emily had worn on their 20th anniversary, a night he had gone to great lengths to plan, complete with dinner at a fancy downtown restaurant, dancing, and love, all wrapped up in an elegant hotel room. That night had been memorable, a celebration of their years together, ending with the two of them tangled up in each other's arms. Matt had adored seeing Emily in that lingerie, thinking it suited her perfectly. Now, as he watched this clip, those cherished memories were crumbling. The video kept playing, showing Emily and this stranger growing increasingly passionate. It was a side of her he had never seen before. Wild, reckless, nothing like the tender, caring woman he thought he knew. Their relationship had always been about gentle affection, the kind of love that left them feeling close, but what he was seeing now was raw and intense, a far cry from the bond they shared. The sight of Emily with another man in such a way shattered Matt. It was as if the woman he'd spent a lifetime with was suddenly a stranger. They'd built a life together, shared a home and a love that he thought was strong and secure. But this was a side of her that Matt had never seen and couldn't ever satisfy. It was a painful reality, realizing their love wasn't as unshakable as he had believed. Lost in the wreckage of his marriage, Matt barely noticed his phone buzzing beside him. It was a text from Emily. He paused the disturbing video and read the message, headed to the store after work. "Do you want anything special for dinner?" He replied, "Nothing special. See you when you get home," the words feeling bitter in his throat. He considered adding "love you" at the end, but the betrayal he'd just witnessed left his heart cold. Moments later, her response came, "Okay, see you at home." "Love you, babe," he muttered under his breath. "Yeah, right," bitterness clear in his voice. Glancing at the time, he knew she'd be home in an hour. Emily was 50 years old, working as an office administrator at the admissions department of a nearby community college. She had been at the job for about 5 years, having left a previous position as a secretary for a local law firm. Her hours were later than Matt's, so he often got home before she did, unless he had to stay late at his job. Matt Tanner, 53, worked as a financial planner at a small firm in the city. His job came with plenty of stress, especially since many of his clients were wealthy business people, all highly concerned about their investments. Matt poured himself into his work, focusing entirely on his clients during business hours. He also traveled from time to time for meetings, which led to him discovering Emily's affair a few months ago. He had just returned from one of these trips, driving back from a nearby town instead of flying for once, as it wasn't far from home. On a whim, he decided to stop by the old lake house he and Emily owned, a small one-bedroom cabin about 40 minutes from their place, tucked away in the hills. It had electricity, a working well, a propane stove, and a fireplace, but little else in the way of modern comforts. It had belonged to Emily's late father, and her mother had left it to her after passing away. Matt and Emily had only stayed there 3 times in the past decade, the last being 2 years ago for a quiet weekend. Given how rarely they used it, Matt had been thinking about selling the cabin. He doubted they'd get much for it, but it was on a picturesque spot near a lake, set on a small acre of land, surrounded by other old cabins. The area was mostly abandoned, with just a dirt road and a simple chain-link fence marking the property boundaries. An old farmer had originally built the cabins and sold them off for his retirement fund, but now the area was mostly forgotten. Matt wanted to check that no one had broken into the place, given its remote location. As he drove up the bumpy road, he wondered who would even want such a secluded cabin, maybe a hunter or an older couple looking for a quiet retreat. They kept a spare key hidden under a specific stone near the front porch, which Matt used to let himself in. Inside, everything seemed in order. The water was still running, and the place hadn't fallen into disrepair, but there were small, subtle changes that Matt noticed. The shower curtain in the bathroom was slightly pulled back, though he remembered leaving it fully open. Soap stains lined the sink, despite him cleaning it last time they were here. Someone had clearly been in the cabin since he and Emily had last visited. Nothing was missing or broken, but there were other small signs. Chairs slightly out of place in the kitchen, the bedroom looking just a little different. Outside, faint tire tracks lined the gravel driveway, but Matt couldn't tell how old they were. The other cabins nearby looked abandoned, and it seemed like no one had visited in years, save for whoever had left those tracks. After checking for a while, Matt felt uneasy. Had Emily come here and forgotten to mention it? It seemed unlikely, but the idea nagged at him. If a stranger had been squatting, why wasn't anything disturbed? A vandal would have made a mess, and yet everything was nearly as he left it, save for the subtle details only someone like Matt, who paid close attention, would catch. Matt chose not to tell Emily right away. He wasn't the kind of guy to be suspicious, but something about this whole situation didn't sit well with him. He trusted his wife. They'd been together for over 2 decades, but there was no denying the odd feeling gnawing at him. He needed to know more before confronting her, not wanting to come across like he was doubting her when all he had was a hunch. After that unsettling trip to the lake house, Matt went ahead and bought an expensive set of surveillance cameras. He installed them carefully, one on the front porch, another in the living room aimed at the kitchen, and the last one in the bedroom, positioned just right to catch a glimpse into the bathroom if the door was left open. Without mentioning anything to Emily, he started making trips to the cabin every weekend to check the footage. It was a 2-hour round trip, so it was easy enough to make up excuses for being gone. Plus, Emily had been out and about more often than usual, shopping, meeting friends, or spending time at the luxury spa she'd joined last year. She'd lost some weight, tightened up, and was looking great for her age. The cameras were motion-activated, so the first 2 weekends he checked, there was nothing. Matt was starting to think he'd wasted his time and money, but on his 3rd visit, there it was, footage. He downloaded it with shaky hands, sitting at the cabin's kitchen table to watch it before heading home. His stomach dropped when he saw the video. His wife, Emily, stepping out of a flashy sports car with a younger man, easily in his mid-30s. They were laughing and chatting like old friends, walking up to the cabin hand in hand. Just like always, Emily retrieved the key from its hiding spot under the stone and unlocked the door. Matt clenched his fists, watching the 2 of them enter the cabin. The moment the door closed, the man grabbed her, and they started kissing passionately. Matt's chest tightened with anger and disbelief. There it was, clear evidence of her betrayal. It was the first time Matt had caught her in the act, and the sight made him sick. He didn't actually throw up, but the disgust and fury were overwhelming. He sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the screen before finally getting up to leave. He made sure to put everything back as it was, so Emily wouldn't suspect he had been there. As Matt drove home, his mind raced with questions and painful thoughts. This couldn't have been the first time she'd used the cabin for her affair, and he had a sinking feeling it wouldn't be the last. He checked the cameras one last time, ensuring they were still in place and functioning, then locked up the cabin and left, heartbroken. All he wanted to do was storm home, confront Emily, and demand answers. But as he drove, he managed to calm down just enough to think straight. Until that day, Matt had never even suspected she was unfaithful. He had loved her deeply and believed she felt the same. They had even talked about cheating before, and Matt had always thought they were on the same page when it came to infidelity. Now, that trust had been shattered. His late father had always told him never to react impulsively, to think things through before doing anything drastic. But this was beyond anything his dad ever had to deal with. How could Emily betray him like this? Matt's mind spun with question after question as he drove. Had she been cheating for a while? Was this just a one-time slip-up, or had it been going on for months? Watching the video, the way she acted with that guy, made it hard to believe it was her first time. The footage had no sound, so Matt had no idea what they'd said to each other. He found himself wondering if this was really worth throwing away 20-plus years of marriage. Before today, Emily had always been an amazing wife, or so Matt had thought. Even now, despite everything, he realized he still loved her, and that made her betrayal hurt even more. One thought hit him hard. If he divorced her, what would his life even look like? He was 53, out of shape, not wealthy, and certainly not what most would call attractive. He wasn't bad-looking for his age, but it was clear his physical appearance, and maybe even his abilities in the bedroom, weren't enough to keep his wife interested. Meanwhile, Emily was still turning heads. As he'd seen in that awful video, she could easily attract men, guys younger than him, guys who still had that spark. But what about him? At his age, the chances of finding someone new seemed slim to none. By the time Matt pulled into his driveway, his head was spinning with frustration, anger, and sorrow. Thankfully, Emily wasn't home yet. She had left a note on the kitchen table, saying she was out shopping and would be back in time for dinner. Matt crumpled the note in his fist, bitterly wondering if she was really out with that guy again. It had been over a month since he first saw the footage, and in that time, he'd found 2 more videos of her with the same man at the cabin. In the latest one, they were getting intimate on the living room couch, confirming that this wasn't some one-off mistake. After that first discovery, Matt had played it cool, pretending everything was fine while his insides burned with suspicion. He began watching her every move, paying close attention to what she wore, where she went, and who she talked to. He even installed a GPS tracker in her car, letting him track her movements in real time from his laptop. No private investigator for Matt. He wanted to handle this on his own, without tipping her off. For months, Emily's routine seemed squeaky clean. Most days, she came straight home after work or headed to the gym, or the spa she loved so much. But Matt was no fool. He noticed how much time she was spending at that high-end health club, and how much she had changed since joining. Emily had always been attractive, but now she was in the best shape of her life. Lean, toned, and confident. Meanwhile, Matt played the supportive husband, cheering her on as she dove into fitness classes. Matt even praised Emily for her fitness progress, completely oblivious to the truth. Then it hit him like a sledgehammer. This health club wasn't just a gym. It was her secret meeting spot. The man from the videos had a gym-built physique, and Matt couldn't ignore the connection any longer. He decided to follow Emily after work, arriving at the spa before she did, watching from a distance as she walked inside. Thanks to the building's large glass windows and bright lighting, Matt could see everything clearly. He discreetly parked his car far enough away and watched as she interacted with the staff. It didn't take long for him to notice her warmth towards a specific young guy. Short dark hair, muscular, and much younger than her. Matt snapped a few pictures with his phone, heart pounding in his chest. When Emily left the spa, Matt watched her walk out with the same man. They were standing by her car, chatting casually, laughing at something he said. Then, without hesitation, Emily placed her hand on his arm, smiling up at him. As she turned to leave, the man wrapped his arm around her waist, planting a quick kiss on her cheek. Emily didn't pull away. She smiled back at him with an affectionate look that turned Matt's stomach. He drove home in a haze, immediately locking himself in his study to research the guy. It didn't take long to find him on the spa's website. His name was Jake Miller, a 30-year-old personal trainer. Over the next few days, Matt staked out the spa regularly, keeping a close watch on Jake's interactions with Emily. Every time she showed up, Jake was there, giving her extra attention during her workouts, flirting with her, and walking her to her car afterward. It was clear they were far more than just trainer and client. Matt realized this wasn't just some casual fling. Jake was a smooth operator, likely flirting with many women at the gym, but it was clear Emily was special to him. Despite their age difference, Emily's confidence and looks had likely caught Jake's eye. She was the one who probably suggested using the lake house for their secret rendezvous. It was the perfect place, secluded, far from home, and completely free. Bringing Jake to their house would have been too risky, with nosy neighbors and Matt around. A motel would leave a paper trail, but the cabin? It was ideal for keeping their affair hidden. Matt's gut twisted at the thought. If he hadn't stopped by the cabin after that business trip, he never would have found out about Emily's betrayal. Despite discovering the first video only a week ago, Matt had managed to keep his emotions in check. It took everything in him not to confront her right away, but he had to think ahead. Whenever the anger boiled over, he left the house to cool down. He needed time to plan. After watching the most recent video of Emily and Jake getting intimate, Matt was furious. She seemed to genuinely enjoy cheating, and even if she ended the affair, Matt didn't think he could ever forgive her. The level of disrespect she'd shown him was beyond repair. No apology could fix this. By keeping his knowledge of the affair hidden, Matt had time to prepare himself. As a financial planner, he knew how to safeguard his assets in case of a divorce. He had a solid chunk of savings stashed away, and he wasn't about to let Emily walk away with half. Sure, he fantasized about leaving her with nothing, but the reality wasn't so simple. Ruining her or getting revenge on Jake crossed his mind more than once, but he wasn't a violent man. He wasn't about to throw his life away or end up in jail because of her betrayal. No, Matt was going to handle this smartly. He had always been a regular guy. No connections to shady characters, no interest in making a scene. He just wanted to get through this mess with his dignity intact. His mind raced with plans for the inevitable divorce. It wasn't the future he had imagined, but what choice did he have now? The sound of Emily's car pulling into the garage jolted him from his thoughts. His stomach twisted with a mix of rage and sadness as he listened to her come inside. Just a year ago, her coming home was the highlight of his day. Now, it was a bitter reminder of her betrayal. She walked into the kitchen, looking as polished as ever in her work attire, her hair perfectly done, carrying bags of groceries. "Hey, babe," she chirped cheerfully, setting the bags down. "How's it going?" "All good," Matt replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm starving, though. Got some steaks? Want to fire up the grill while I make a salad?" "Sounds perfect," Emily said, heading for the kitchen, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside her husband's mind. Matt stepped out to the back deck, preparing the grill. It took everything in him to act normal after seeing that last video of her with Jake. There was a time when he loved these moments, grilling outside, sharing stories from their day, and spending the evening together. But now, he couldn't look at her the same way. She wasn't his wife anymore, just an older woman wrapped up in an affair with a younger guy. Still, he had to admit, Emily was an impressive actress. Despite treating him so cruelly behind his back, she came home every day with a smile, acting like the perfect wife. If Matt didn't know any better, he might have even believed her. Emily acted like the same faithful wife she had always been. Of course, they were both pretending, but she was much better at it. For Matt, the act was almost unbearable. Several times in the past few weeks, he had nearly let his anger spill out, but he managed to hold it back. It amazed him how she could keep her two lives so separate. She was cheating on him regularly, but at home, she acted like nothing had changed, like a devoted wife. There were no signs that she was seeing another man. What confused him more was how she had started offering him more intimacy. Before, he had practically had to beg for it. Now, she was initiating it, even encouraging him in the mornings. Matt knew it was just out of guilt, trying to make up for her betrayal. But after seeing her with Jake, he doubted she even felt guilty anymore. He had thought she was honest, but now he realized how easily she could lie, hiding everything without a hint of deception. Once Matt finished grilling the steaks, they sat down to eat. Dinner was mostly silent. They made small talk, but it felt forced. Emily barely touched her food, her eyes occasionally flicking toward Matt, as if trying to read him. Matt sensed the tension but kept quiet, knowing that one wrong word could break the mask he was wearing. Normally, they would end the meal with coffee or dessert, but not tonight. Matt ate quickly, eager to leave the uncomfortable atmosphere. He cleared the table in record time and retreated to the living room, settling on the couch to watch TV. Emily followed him, wine in hand, and sat beside him. Her gaze lingered on him, making him wish he had gone to his office instead. "Everything okay?" she asked sweetly during a commercial break, her voice too light. Matt felt his stomach turn but forced himself to stay calm, putting on a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just tired." "You sure? You seem a little off today," she said, reaching over to touch his arm. Matt swallowed the nausea rising in his throat. "I'm good. Just work stuff," he managed to say. Emily wasn't convinced. "Maybe we need some time for just us. It's been a while, hasn't it?" she teased. letting out a small, nervous laugh. Matt felt his throat tighten. Really? Yeah, she replied, with a soft giggle. I miss you. You've been distant lately. Starting to think maybe you're not into me anymore. They both chuckled, but the laughter felt hollow. Where once this playful banter might have led to something more, now it only deepened Matt's sense of frustration. He couldn't enjoy it anymore, not after what he had seen. In the past, Emily used to drop subtle hints when she wanted to be close. She might sit on his lap or give him a playful kiss, and Matt would eagerly follow her to the bedroom. It had been simple back then, but now, knowing she was with someone else, his desire for her had vanished. What used to be excitement was now replaced with disgust. For weeks, he had been avoiding her advances, keeping his distance. At first, it wasn't noticeable, but now even Emily seemed to realize something had changed. They hadn't been intimate in weeks, and she was beginning to notice. Their marriage had shifted from lovers to roommates, and the gap between them was growing. Matt knew he couldn't keep resisting her forever. Part of him still felt aroused by the thought of her, even though he hated himself for it. Watching her with Jake had stirred something in him, but it also left him bitter and angry. She had never shown him that kind of passion, and it hurt to think that she had been saving it for someone else. He had made up his mind, though. He wouldn't compete with her lover. He knew any intimacy between them now would only remind her of what she had with Jake. The way she responded to Jake, the intensity, she had never been like that with Matt. It was clear to him that she never would be. Over the last month, he had ignored her advances, pretending not to hear her suggestive remarks or feigning sleep as soon as they got into bed. But he knew he couldn't keep this up much longer. They had once shared a decent, if sporadic, sex life. Matt had believed they were compatible until he saw the video that shattered his confidence. Now, he doubted his ability to satisfy her, especially after witnessing how uninhibited she was with Jake. She had never shown that kind of desire with him, and it left him feeling inadequate. Emily sighed beside him, breaking the silence. I was thinking, she said softly, maybe we could head to bed a little early tonight. What do you think? Matt turned to her, keeping his voice steady. Are you tired? She laughed and gave him a playful slap on the arm. Not at all. I was thinking, we could spend some time together. I know, Matt responded, his skin flushing and sweat forming. He could feel Emily's eyes on him, puzzled by his lack of enthusiasm toward her obvious invitation. Maybe later, he added calmly. You go ahead. I want to finish watching the show. Emily sighed in disappointment, and he felt the warmth of her presence beside him, the familiar scent of her blonde hair and her spicy perfume tempting him. He tried to suppress his desire and avoided her bewildered look. No matter how hard he tried to quell it, his love for her made it impossible to completely push those feelings away. She eventually turned her attention back to the TV, clearly baffled by his hesitation. Her pride was bruised by his rejection. Matt, however, was determined to let her feel what rejection was like for once. Even when Emily yawned dramatically and stretched in a way that highlighted her figure, obviously hoping to catch his attention, he remained focused on the television. When she realized he wasn't reacting, she sighed again. I guess I'm tired, honey. I'm heading to bed now. Care to join me? It was an invitation he hadn't heard in years. I'll be up soon, he replied nonchalantly. Just wake me when you come up. I might not fall asleep right away, she hinted with a smile. Okay, see you soon, he said, giving her a quick glance before she disappeared into the bedroom. Matt felt a wave of relief as he stayed in the living room for another few hours. It was past 1 in the morning when he finally went to bed, making sure she was already asleep before slipping under the covers. But sleep didn't come. He woke up early, still tired, and quietly got out of bed, dressing in the guest room so as not to disturb her. His pride wouldn't let him be intimate with her while she was cheating on him. He longed for the days when their relationship had been simple, when closeness with Emily had come naturally. But now, since she had initiated this whole situation, he refused to pretend everything was normal. If she wanted intimacy so badly, she could go back to her lover. It wasn't his responsibility to ensure her happiness anymore. The tension in the house grew thicker with each passing day. Emily was starting to get concerned, sensing that something was off. Their communication had dwindled, and physical affection had become almost non-existent. Matt barely spoke to her during meals, and when she tried to hug him, his body stiffened, sometimes even flinching at her touch. It was obvious to her that something was bothering him, but he remained silent on the issue. Whenever she tried to bring it up, he changed the subject or brushed off her concerns. The love and connection they had once shared through words and actions had evaporated, making it difficult to talk to him at all. The next night, Emily tried to seduce him again. But just like before, Matt showed no interest. She began to wonder if he had somehow found out about her affair, but she quickly dismissed the thought. She and Jake had been careful. No one knew about their relationship, not even their close friends. They acted friendly enough during workouts to avoid raising suspicion, and any real physical contact took place far away from the gym or anyone they knew. The passion and excitement she felt with her younger lover were reserved for their secret trips to the cabin. Emily was worried about Matt's distant behavior, but not overly so. She still loved him and wanted to be supportive if something was wrong. She never imagined that whatever was bothering him could actually endanger their marriage. She assumed it was probably just work stress, something that had come up from time to time over the years. She was disappointed they hadn't been intimate in a while, but she figured it wasn't her fault. She had offered herself to him more in the past month than she had in years, even though she wasn't particularly aroused herself. She just didn't want Matt to feel neglected and couldn't understand why he didn't seem to want her anymore. Was he no longer attracted to her? That didn't seem possible. She was in better shape than she had been in years. Maybe he was just getting older and losing interest in sex. It was strange, though, how Matt seemed to be losing interest in her while her own desires were increasing. Lately, younger men had been paying her more attention, particularly at work, where she was surrounded by college-aged guys. She was approached frequently and had to be cautious not to lead any of them on, maintaining a professional distance. With her secret lover, she could fulfill her cravings, but she still wanted Matt to be happy. Their sex life had never been all that exciting, so she wasn't too alarmed by the growing distance between them. She would continue to be the loving wife Matt expected, while saving her passionate desires for Jake. Emily figured the affair would cool off eventually, but for now, it was still thrilling. Whenever she could, she would meet Jake at the cabin for a few hours of exhilarating intimacy, then clean up and return to her regular, somewhat boring life with Matt. She always made sure to clean up thoroughly after their trysts. She didn't want Matt to ever suspect anything if he happened to stop by the cabin. They never used the bed for their encounters, preferring other spots that were easier to tidy up. Despite Matt's distant behavior, Emily wasn't overly worried. Emily wasn't ready to give up her affair. As the next week passed, Matt's indifferent attitude started to bother her. She wondered if he suspected something was off and decided to take a break from seeing Jake, at least until her husband returned to normal. She informed Jake that they should put things on hold for a while. Jake was disappointed, thinking she was worrying over nothing, but he agreed. By the second week of their break, Emily struggled to keep her mind off sex. She constantly daydreamed about their cabin rendezvous and longed for Jake's passionate touch. She didn't want to get involved with anyone else, but working at a college meant being surrounded by plenty of attractive men. She found herself fantasizing about colleagues and becoming more susceptible to attention from good-looking guys. Before her affair, Emily had hardly noticed her male coworkers, as she wasn't particularly focused on physical desires. But since starting her affair and experiencing regular, passionate encounters with her young lover, she couldn't imagine going without it anymore. When her desires became overwhelming, she decided to break her self-imposed celibacy. During her weekly workout, she told Jake she was ready to see him again, expressing her eagerness to resume their affair. He readily agreed. They kept a respectable distance from each other that day, pretending everything was normal. As he walked her to her car, they made plans to meet the following week at the cabin. Matt had mentioned a business meeting that day, giving Emily a few precious hours to slip away for a rendezvous. Emily returned home that evening feeling refreshed. Even though Matt was quieter than usual, she brushed off any concerns. He had been distant for weeks, showing little interest in being physical with her, but she didn't let it bother her. With the anticipation of being with Jake next week, she pushed aside her frustrations. While Matt moped around the house, Emily gave him space, trying to maintain a friendly atmosphere between them. Her cheerful mood carried into work that Friday, and even her boss noticed. "What's got you so happy today, Emily?" he asked. "Oh, nothing special," she replied with a smile. "Things have just been going well for me lately. I'm happy with where my life is right now." "Did Matt get a promotion? Or did you win the lottery?" her supervisor joked. "Or maybe you're on a second honeymoon?" "Nothing like that," Emily chuckled. "I'm just feeling really grateful for my home life. Matt's been wonderful, and I appreciate everything I have. Things aren't perfect, but they could be a lot worse." "That's a great attitude, Emily. I wish more people thought like that," her boss remarked. After work, Emily headed home, feeling elated. She couldn't wait for her upcoming meeting with Jake, feeling more aroused than usual. As soon as she walked into the kitchen, she was surprised to see that Matt had already prepared dinner. She hugged him tightly, even more surprised when he hugged her back and kissed her cheek. "This is wonderful, Matt," she exclaimed, admiring the meal. "Would you like some wine with dinner, honey?" he asked. "Yes, I'd love a glass," she replied suggestively. "But not too much. I don't want to get too sleepy because I plan to reward you later for making such a delicious meal." "Your smile is reward enough for me, darling," Matt said, his tone neutral. "Oh no," Emily giggled. "I'm going to give you something much better than a smile tonight. It's been too long since we've been together, and I want to show my wonderful husband how much I love him." Matt smiled back, but his eyes betrayed no emotion. "I think you're wonderful too," he said simply. They ate and chatted, more naturally than they had in weeks. Emily was glad to see Matt opening up, even if only slightly. After dinner, they cleaned up together and went to the living room to watch TV, following their usual routine. But tonight, with Emily's upbeat mood, she was determined to seduce him. It had been too long since they'd been intimate, and she missed it. Despite his age, Matt was still an attractive, healthy man with needs she assumed had gone unmet. Even though she had a lover on the side, Emily was still eager to fulfill her husband's desires and hoped tonight would be the night. Matt seemed to be in a better mood than usual, which encouraged Emily. During a commercial break, she touched his arm and excused herself, heading to the bedroom to change into something more revealing. She knew Matt liked her in skimpy outfits, so she chose a thin tank top and tight shorts from her dresser. Feeling daring, she decided to skip the bra, knowing the tiny top and bikini panties would surely get his attention. As she admired herself in the mirror, she smiled, pleased with how attractive she still looked at her age. Confident that Matt wouldn't be able to resist her, she eagerly made her way back to the living room. When she returned, Matt was in the kitchen. She settled herself on the sofa, assuming a seductive pose, and waited for him. A few minutes later, he joined her with a beer and another glass of wine. "I filled your glass," he said, handing her the drink. "Hope you wanted more." "Yes, I'm definitely in the mood for more," she replied, trying to hint as subtly as she could. "I'm in the mood for something else too, darling," Matt remarked, his tone neutral. "I can see that," she replied with amusement, knowing she looked alluring and fully available. Emily rarely felt this attracted to Matt anymore, but tonight was an exception. She couldn't help but wonder how Jake would react to seeing her like this, but she made sure not to appear too eager. She didn't want to seem desperate, so she waited for Matt to make the first move. Maintaining her ego was important to her. She sat close to him, signaling her readiness and hoping he would initiate something. But he remained focused on the TV. Eventually, Emily inched closer, sipping her wine and trying to cuddle up to him. She rested her head on his shoulder and gently rubbed his arm, expecting him to respond. But Matt didn't look at her. As the next show started, frustration began to set in, and despite the wine making her drowsy, she didn't realize Matt had slipped a sleeping pill into her drink. Soon enough, she dozed off on the sofa, only to wake up later in the dark, covered with a blanket and Matt nowhere in sight. Confused and half asleep, she mumbled to herself, noticing it was 4 a.m. Without changing, she crawled into bed next to him, feeling exhausted and annoyed. The next morning, Emily felt resentful about his lack of attention. He had missed an opportunity for intimacy, and she couldn't help but feel frustrated. She got up late, realizing it was nearly noon, and found Matt already in the kitchen. "Morning, honey," he greeted her cheerfully. "Want some coffee?" "Yeah, sure," she replied flatly. What happened last night? You fell asleep, he explained with a smile. I figured you had a long week, and you looked so peaceful, I didn't want to wake you. You should have woken me, she said, slightly irritated. I know, he replied vaguely. By the way, Emily, how about we go away for the weekend? Go away? She echoed, still groggy and confused. Yeah, let's go to the cabin for a couple of days, he suggested with a grin. We've both been working hard, and we haven't spent much time together. Emily sipped her coffee, trying to clear her head. The cabin? We haven't been there in years. I know, but we could use some time together, you know? Matt persisted. It's so peaceful there. We could reconnect, have some fun. Fun, she repeated, still trying to wake up fully. Her mind cleared, and she suddenly realized what he might be implying. Was he suggesting they rekindle their physical relationship after leaving her hanging last night? She wasn't expecting this. Fun, huh? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, Matt chuckled. I know I'm not the most romantic guy, but maybe if we break from our usual routine, something might click. It's just for the weekend, and we'll be back to work on Monday, but it could be fun. What do you think? Emily shrugged. I guess so. We'll need to stop by the store and get some things. I already picked up everything yesterday, Matt said with a smile. Well, aren't you prepared? Emily teased. Yeah, always prepared, he laughed. Let's get ready, and we can leave soon. Start our weekend right now. As Emily thought about it, she grew a little anxious. Why not? A weekend away with Matt might help their relationship, and if things went well, maybe she could even seduce him. Okay, let me change and pack a bag, she said. Great, Matt said excitedly. I've already packed my stuff. I'll put it in the car, and we can head out. On the drive to the cabin, Emily tried to use her cell phone, but it wasn't working. Oh darn, she said, pressing buttons. I thought it was charged, but I guess the battery's dead. That's okay, sweetheart, Matt reassured her. You can use mine if you need it. No, it's fine. I'll just charge it when we get to the cabin, she replied. An hour and a half later, they arrived at the cabin. They put the food in the fridge and made sandwiches. Emily felt happy, but a little on edge as she looked around the small cabin. She searched for any signs of her affair but didn't see anything out of place, and Matt didn't seem to notice anything unusual either. After lunch, they took a walk around the lake, talking, laughing, and enjoying the beautiful surroundings. Matt held her hand, pointing out things he wanted her to see, and even hugged her a couple of times, catching her when she tripped. He was friendlier than he had been in months, and Emily was thrilled. It felt so good that she almost felt guilty, knowing she would be cheating on him in this very place in just a few days. The afternoon was great, and the evening was even better. Emily hadn't felt this close to her husband in a long time. When they returned to the cabin, she took a chance and kissed him. To her surprise, he welcomed her affection. As darkness fell, Matt played some music, and they opened a bottle of wine. As they drank, he shared funny stories from their earlier years of marriage, and Emily, feeling a little tipsy, encouraged him to hold her. When he wrapped his arms around her slim body, she felt a familiar warmth, and the anticipation grew within her. The romantic atmosphere persisted as they went to bed, and unlike at home, they lay side by side, tenderly kissing and touching each other. Emily was eager for her husband to make love to her at last. It's been so long, please, honey, she whispered, parting her legs invitingly. Don't tease me anymore. I'm yours. Go ahead and take me. I'm so ready, Emily urged, her voice breathy with anticipation. You are? Matt teased back. God, yes. I could scream. Can't you tell? She tried to focus on her husband, but she couldn't help comparing the slow, intimate lovemaking to the passionate encounters with Jake. Both had their thrills, but what she was experiencing now felt more meaningful. Matt's love for her was evident in every touch, every word. In contrast, Jake only desired her body. There was no love between them, and she knew it. While she enjoyed the attention Jake gave her, she would never trade it for what she had with Matt. As they lay together, unsure of the time, Emily heard a noise outside. It felt early to go to bed, but without TV to watch, turning in early seemed reasonable. Then, another noise caught their attention, making both of them alert. What's that? Matt whispered. his voice tense. Is someone outside? I don't know, Emily whispered back, now sitting up, suddenly afraid. Another sound, possibly coming from the porch, made her heart race. What should we do? She asked, her voice trembling. Matt pushed the covers back and quietly got out of bed. Stay here, he said firmly. He moved to his bag and took something out. Before Emily could ask what he was doing, the front door rattled, sending her into a panic. The door swung open, and a dark figure stepped inside. Realizing this was a home invasion, Emily screamed in terror. In a flash, chaos erupted. A deafening bang tore through the air, followed by another. Emily's world spun as she processed what had just happened. Matt had shot the intruder. From the safety of the bedroom, she heard the thud of a body hitting the ground, followed by a horrible gurgling sound as the man clawed at his neck where the bullet had struck. A scream ripped from Emily's throat, disbelief gripping her. "Oh my God!" she wailed, hands flying to her face as she collapsed in shock. Matt, calm as ever, approached the body cautiously, gun still steady in his hand. He nudged the man to check for any signs of life, then ventured outside to ensure they were safe. Returning to the cabin, Matt flipped on the lights, unknowingly triggering Emily's worst nightmare. Her breath hitched, and her eyes widened in horror as she saw the lifeless figure lying on the floor. It was Jake. Sobbing uncontrollably, Emily could barely make sense of what was happening. Matt approached her, pulling her into a tight embrace, murmuring reassurances. "It's over now," he whispered, his voice a lifeline in the chaos. "We're safe, Emily." Her thoughts were a whirlwind as Matt held her. After a long pause, he spoke again, this time his voice more serious. "We need to call the cops," he said, the words heavy with finality. "They'll want to check everything, treat this like a crime scene." Emily collapsed onto the bed, tears flowing freely. Matt watched her with grim determination. When she stumbled to the bathroom, overcome with nausea, he seized the opportunity. Moving quickly, he grabbed her cell phone and discreetly disabled it before slipping it back into her purse. Then, he returned to the body, plucking an envelope from Jake's jacket. The note inside was one Matt had pinned at a library earlier that day and planted on Jake's car. With a bitter smile, he read the damning words. "This sex coupon is valid for tonight only. Please bring it and redeem it for an evening of intense passion. I apologize for the short notice, but I just found out he's away this weekend. Can you meet me at the cabin, lover? I hope so. I'll make it worth your while. Signed, your faithful partner." Matt crumpled the note in his hand before heading outside. Jake's car was parked in the driveway. The area was a dead zone for cell signals, so he walked to a secluded spot by the lake, hidden by shrubs. There, he lit the note and envelope on fire with a lighter, watching the evidence turn to ashes. Rubbing the blackened remains between two rocks, he scattered the residue and covered it with leaves, erasing all traces of his plan. Matt took a moment to calm himself. He had never killed anyone before, and he hadn't expected it to feel like this. His hands still trembled as he made the 911 call to the police. Now, all he had to do was keep his nerves steady and let the situation unfold. He had taken down the surveillance cameras and hidden the footage in a place no one would ever find. It was a good thing he had kept his knowledge of Emily's affair to himself. Once the police started asking questions, everything would come out. Even if Emily didn't confess, it wouldn't take long for the cops to connect her to Jake through the spa. The police arrived in under an hour. Matt was waiting for them outside. He admitted to the shooting, handing over his gun, which was promptly bagged as evidence. When questioned, he assured them he hadn't touched the body since firing the shots. Emily corroborated his story, her voice trembling with fear. However, the cops grew suspicious when they learned that the intruder had used a key to enter the cabin. "How did he know where the key was?" one of the officers asked. Matt explained about the key under the rock, but claimed he had no idea how Jake knew it was there. But when they questioned Emily, the weight of the situation broke her. She couldn't hold back any longer and broke down, confessing everything. Emily confessed that she and Jake had been to the cabin before. Matt pretended to be shocked, and his acting seemed convincing as the cops exchanged suspicious glances. Both he and Emily were taken to the station for questioning. A forensic team arrived at the cabin soon after and meticulously examined the scene. At the station, Matt contacted a lawyer he had used in the past. Following the lawyer's advice, he refused to say anything further until his attorney arrived. On the other hand, Emily, devastated by her lover's death and bewildered by how it had happened, lost control. The cops took advantage of her vulnerability, coaxing out details about her months-long affair with Jake. Matt didn't mind her confession. She had no idea about his plan and couldn't reveal anything incriminating. After spending a long night and part of the next day in custody, both were released but instructed not to leave town. Despite weeks of questioning and investigations, no incriminating evidence was found regarding the shooting. Matt sensed their suspicion, but without solid proof, the police had to classify it as a justified homicide. Breaking into someone's home in the middle of the night was a crime, and any jury would likely side with the homeowner. Though lingering questions remained, Matt knew a jury would likely give him the benefit of the doubt. Matt took Emily home on Sunday. She was distraught and kept apologizing for cheating until Matt finally told her to stop. He already knew about everything, maintaining a confused look as she confessed all the sordid details. While he regretted having to end the young man's life, he saw no other way to rid himself of Jake and restore his pride. Returning to work on Monday, Matt left Emily to deal with her own emotional wreckage. When he returned home that evening, a neighbor was there, helping to console her as she struggled to keep her composure. After a brief dinner, Matt confronted her about the affair. Emily cried throughout, offering the typical excuses and pleas for forgiveness. But her words fell on deaf ears, and by Thursday, Matt served her with divorce papers. Emily nearly collapsed when she received the papers. Having lost both her husband and her lover in the same week, her world had crumbled. Brad, concerned for her well-being, took her to the emergency room as she cried uncontrollably. She pleaded with him to stay, to forgive her, asking, "What am I going to do now?" With little sympathy, he coldly replied, "I don't know, Emily. We're getting divorced. You're no longer my concern." Despite her declarations of love, Matt callously retorted, "Just go find another lover, Emily. You seem to have no trouble finding them. Just make sure he's as well endowed as the last one." His harsh words left her inconsolable as he left, never to return to their home. Though Matt was never charged with a crime, authorities kept a close eye on him, questioning acquaintances about the homicide. The suspicion surrounding him cast a shadow over his career, eventually forcing him to leave his job. However, Matt quickly found another position and managed to stay afloat financially. He and Emily sold the house and the cabin, splitting the proceeds. Matt received half of the marital assets and kept additional funds hidden from her, despite her lawyer's investigation into their finances. He maintained a lower standard of living for a while, remaining vigilant against anything that could incriminate him. Despite the shooting and the divorce, Matt carried on with life. He started exercising at home, improving his physique and shedding weight. He stayed in touch with his daughter, who hoped for reconciliation, though Matt firmly refused. Though he had once felt insecure about his attractiveness, Matt began dating older women and found enjoyment and companionship in their company. It took some time, but he eventually built up the courage to ask someone out, finding solace in socializing and reconnecting with female companionship. Though he wasn't ready for another long-term relationship, Matt discovered that at 55, with a successful career and many good years ahead of him, he still attracted plenty of female attention. In the months following his divorce, he found himself less lonely than expected, and gradually, he adjusted to his new life. Meanwhile, Emily spiraled into a deep depression, struggling to cope with the loss of her husband and her lover. Her once carefree attitude toward love and sex had vanished. Despite lingering feelings for Matt, she couldn't regain control of her emotions or her life. The vibrant sex life she had once enjoyed was gone, and she felt as though it could never be recovered. Regular therapy sessions and medication helped Emily manage her mental health, but her physical health declined as she stopped exercising and gained weight. She became increasingly reclusive, abandoning the health spa that had been the catalyst for her troubles. Her daughter arranged medical care as Emily's condition worsened, though she rarely left the house. Friends of Matt informed him that Emily planned to move out of state to escape the harsh gossip and rumors surrounding her affair.